this week's Fireside Chat with Jesse and Deb Reuben. We're going to switch it up a little bit today, as we always do with Deb. I mean, I think I am a creative person, and then I get to talk to Deb maybe a couple times a month, and I don't feel so special anymore. So Deb Reuben, founder and CEO of TomorrowZone, thanks for joining me here today.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
No, I think this is our third time.
Yep.
It's perfect because every time we do it, it's a different spin on it, which is fantastic.
Yeah, got to keep it fresh.
Got to keep it fresh. And I know we're just briefly talking before I hit the record button. I think you said you had a secret question or surprise question. So I guess we'll just kind of see how that turns out.
You want to start with that one?
No. Let's at least,
well, all right, I'll save it for later.
Maybe it'll keep viewership actually paying attention past what is the average, like 3 minutes, and then people are like, that sucks, I'm gonna turn it off.
Yeah, I don't know.
But whatever. But I think our first topic that we want to talk about is the upcoming Equipment Finance Cares event, not only known as we call it EFC, coming up Tuesday, June 21st in Deb's backyard in Minneapolis. Deb is going to be moderating again, and she's going to be touching on something near and dear to her heart, the human side of innovation. So let's talk through those topics of conversation and what you'll be covering in that panel, Deb, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, we talk about innovation a lot, and I think that, a mistake is to think that innovation is only about technology, because it's not. It takes humans. Technology can enable some of the solutions to the problems that we're trying to solve with innovation, but really, I think that it's so important to focus on the human side of innovation, and how are you empowering the humans on your team or even yourself to be able to creatively and innovatively solve the problems of today. Because we can't solve the problems of the future with yesterday's thinking, but if we're not working on ourselves and we're not continually learning and growing and expanding ourselves, we're not going to be able to come up with the solutions that we need. And so I just think it's really important for us to think about what practically do we need to be doing as leaders for our own personal growth, but also to encourage that growth in our own teams, so that people can pull together, so that we know how to work together and solve wicked, tricky problems in new ways. So that's kind of what it's all about.
Well, that's a good synopsis there. And before we kind of go into a little bit more of those things, so the panelists that we have, everybody, we have Tanya Stone from Great America Financial Services. We have Darren Lisi from Oakmont Capital.
Awesome.
Jeff Bilbray from LeasePath. And then we have Nancy Robles from Eastern Funding. So awesome. A lot of senior leadership, technology-driven individuals, and especially with like Nancy, I guess all of them kind of focus on. I mean, Jeff with his intelligent workplace. I'm sure you've heard about that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And Jeff and Nancy both spoke on the panel last summer at your first event.
They are recurring. I think Nancy was on yours, and Jeff was on mine. But what's interesting is I'm not even moderating anything this year, so I can just be the MC at the beginning and end and let it go. But
awesome.
But
wisened up a bit.
Why do I have to grab the mic again? So an interesting little fun fact about like me is I don't really like grabbing a microphone and talking in front of a room as much as I seem like I am that outgoing person.
No way. Wow.
It's the anticipation of what I want to say and what actually comes out of my mouth at the time that I like psych myself out a little bit. And I'll give a little example. So at NIFA, when I was co-chairing that with Amy Sprague, we had Chad Olson, a guy, not sure if you've heard his story, but a young man who had eye cancer when he was like 6, went through like chemo for 6 years, and finally they said, we can't do anymore, you need to remove your other eye. And I'm listening to this kid tell his story about overcoming adversity, knowing that this is the last day you're going to have an eye. And I'm sitting there wondering about like, what am I going to say during like, I feel nervous. It's like, come on, jerk. Like, really? That's adversity. Just suck it up and just go.
Yeah. It takes, I think it takes time to get over that. I used to be really afraid to speak in front of groups. Like the first time I had to do it, I was just in knots. One of the things I heard somebody say this recently, and it really resonated for me. Like it's okay to have butterflies. You just got to choose to get them flying in formation. Well, that's interesting. But the other thing that really helps me to think about is like, if I'm nervous, that you can reframe it. So I just think, that's my body getting ready to make awesome happen. And
that's fantastic. But the problem is though, is like when my arm's going like this or my leg is doing something similar,
yeah,
I'm like, can you just calm yourself down a little bit? Can you just like tell my body to stop?
Yeah, the thing is, I think what really helps is when you really try to put your eyes on the other people and not yourself, because it's so interesting. I've done so many different events where I'm speaking on a stage and I'm like nervous as heck. Like my lip is quivering and everything. I'm like, oh my God, everybody's seeing this. And then you go back and look at the video and you can't even tell.
That's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering if I'm psyching myself out, or is my leg really fidgety, or is it just in my mind?
Yeah, it might be. I don't know.
I don't know, but I know.
Are you feeling fidgety right now?
No, I mean, you make me comfortable on these things, so I don't have to worry about that. No, there are some of these where I'm like, when you're just with people that are much smarter than you, but you can't let people know that they're smarter than you.
Oh my God, I'm always with people smarter than me.
So I'm like, I don't want to feel stupid here.
I love being surrounded by people smarter than me.
But I guess that's the human side of just being human and talking, not the human side of innovation. So we'll go back into that if you don't mind.
The human side of humanity.
There you go. There you go.
Here we are, just being human.
So, some of the additional things that you want to dive in on this panel, or if I'm someone locally or not even locally, like why else would I want to come listen to you moderate this session, Deb, and these other thought leaders talk?
Well, I think it probably would be beneficial to come and hear what your peers are doing to encourage the skills, but also the environment for innovation to happen, for innovative ideas to come to life. So if you think about what it really takes to get creative and to solve problems in new ways, you need this. You just said you're comfortable in this environment with me. And you could have a crazy idea right now. I might laugh with you, but I'm not going to laugh at you or make you feel bad or, make you feel like you don't belong anymore because you brought up your idea. And that's the psychological safety that's required for innovation to happen for real. And so, if you're in an environment where you don't feel safe questioning something that is status quo, or you don't feel safe bringing up your idea as wild as it might be, then you're stifling innovation just with that environment and culture. But there are things that leaders can do to overcome that, very practical things that you can do to build that into your culture so that you can move your team forward. And so, I know for myself, I love to find out what my peers are doing in real life, day to day, so this isn't about theory. This is about going beyond theory. Boots on the ground. What are you doing to help make innovation happen in your company and to help your own team members to feel safe being in that creative space?
No, and that makes complete sense. And it's how do you foster that environment where it's welcomed, right? And not like I'm going to speak up, say something, and have a target on my back. I've been in those situations, and it's like, well, what? You say you want different ideas and perspectives. I bring one to the table. It makes sense. Like,
yeah. And how do you feel when that happens? Like, you don't want to ever bring another idea, do you?
No, if anything, you just feel like even less discouraged about it. And especially if there's someone else that's like, wow, that was a great idea. What's going on with it? Like, why are they going to want to come forward?
Right. Well, and even worse is like, not only am I not going to bring my ideas to you, I'll bring them somewhere else where they're appreciated. We talk about the great resignation and the challenge, getting and keeping great people. Well, this is one of those things that drives people away. Even in my own career experience, that drove me away from one of my employers. Wild ideas were not welcome.
That's a good thought. Why don't you go sit over there and think about that thought? But turn
Yeah,
around,
like
because we
I'll
don't
bring
really
these
want to
wild
see.
ideas somewhere else then.
That's fine. But speaking of the comfortable and safe space, like we'll go back to the origination of how Equipment Finance Cares started. In our first event, I think I told you a few times, happened. I say might not because I'm wacky, but you giving me when I floated the idea about doing some panels by you, you were just like, let's do it. Actually, I think you said, let's make awesome happen, because that's how you do.
Yep.
But that instilled the confidence in me where it's like, maybe we have something here. So once again, thank you for that, Deb.
Well, and there's something to say for going on those journeys with somebody, whether you're learning or you're experimenting, you're trying something for the first time. Isn't it easier when you're doing it with friends or with other people who are interested in the same outcomes as you? You don't have to be alone.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you need to be, I think being vulnerable is not a bad thing, because I think it humbles you a little bit, but it's comforting too, if someone else wants to, let's see how this goes. Because if we go back to June of last year, when this whole thing started, I didn't know. I mean, I have a few mentors in the industry and a few other people I talk to. Majority of them are positive, but of course you always have that one guy that it's like, you have a good reputation, you're good at what you do, why don't you stay in your lane? Are you really going to be open up to criticism and negative feedback? And I'm not going to lie, when I send surveys out after every one of these, when I see negative feedback, I'm like, like it still bothers you, but you got to understand and look into it. And rambling on.
It's data, but I think Equipment Finance Cares is a primary example of stepping out and doing something new and innovative. And I think what helped that to happen is just the people that came alongside of you to support you in this wild and crazy idea that is so different for this industry. So kudos to you for having the bravery to make that leap.
Trying, but also kudos to those people that surrounded me too. So I thank everyone who's been a part of it. And I guess we'll touch on some highlights. So after the last event, we have now donated over 10 grand to the foundations and charities case. And through the awareness that we've achieved by these events, Deb, we are now over $70,000 that we have raised in additional funds for these charities and foundations.
Wow, that's fantastic.
And we're just getting started, and we got our paperwork done last week for the 501c3. So we're almost completely done with that designation. What a
congratulations
that is. But
oh my gosh, yay, that's so exciting. So when you look back on the past year, so you've been at this for a year, what are some of the highlights for you beyond the money raised and getting your designation? That's awesome, but tell me about some of the highlights and the moments that you remember most.
Well, I mean, I guess we already mentioned one of the first ones. That's having that conversation where you agreed to be a moderator, because let's face it, Deb Reuben carries a lot of weight in this industry. I've always valued you as a thought leader that thinks outside the box. So if Deb's on board, he's not as crazy as he sounds, or instant street credibility, I don't know. But that's one of the main things. It was also reaching out to those original sponsors of Minneapolis, because basically that event cost like $8 grand. that I put on my credit card because we had a space, and you have to get the sound, you have to get all the AV stuff. And it's like photographer, I wanted to make sure it was as well as it could be. And being able to raise, I think we were over 10 grand for that event with our first one, and people not even questioning. It's like, okay, what are we doing? Okay. So that meant from all those answers, it's giving that first interview what EFC does in that room. I think I probably wrote like a 2-page speech that I trimmed down to like a paragraph, because I'm like,
awesome.
Didn't want to just keep yapping. But having you go through, I can almost remember the first one like it was yesterday, because I was so like nervous, like what are people gonna think? And then it ended, and every single person was like, wow, that's amazing. So every one of our sponsors from last year are all back for June.
Oh, that's so cool.
And they're either donating more or want to send more people, and we're also picking up additional ones, which is great. But from that event there, it's people coming up afterwards, and they're like, to Laverne, I owe a lot of this I guess baby of whatever you call EFC to the work that she put into it as well. And when people come up to her and they're like, me too, or people come up and they're, I would like to be my true self at work too. Thank you for trying to, for giving me the strength of, I can to be my true self. When you have like a Nancy Robles panel, she's not quiet. She's like, I am, this is who I am. This is me. And not only that, this is what being me has brought to my company that I work for. That's powerful, and people want to hear more about that. So at the end of every one of our events, just watching the people in the crowd that's relatively quiet come up to individuals that are on a panel, and they say, hey, I can relate to what you mentioned or what you're going through.
Yeah, it was really powerful. I remember that first event, and if I could sum it up in one word, it's real. Everybody who was speaking was just super real, and the stories that people were sharing and the things that they were saying just really resonated with everyone, and it was just a really interesting feeling in the audience being a part of that. It was very different from what we typically experience. Almost, I don't know, it was almost kind of an intimate environment, like a conversation more than a one-way presentation type of thing.
Yeah, it's not like someone's coming there and they're just preaching to you or telling you this or telling you how to do it. It's more of an interactive, and that's kind of the whole purpose behind it is, like you foster that safe space where people can just sit there and we can have, like you said, real conversations. Because at the end of the day, the industry is, everyone's dealing with things. How do you sit there and how do we bring them up? How do you bring them up diplomatically, but then have like a real conversation in regards to where do we go from here?
Yeah, and I just kind of love the way that it honors the humanity behind each of the characters that you see on the screen or in the panel discussion. You never know the story that's going on the other side of the screen, or the other side of the microphone. And it's just kind of cool to relate to each other on a more human level in that informal, casual get together. So yeah, I hope you come join us in Minneapolis. It's going to be so much fun. So what else is on the program?
Well, so besides, I want to bring up one more thing. So it's also a highlight from last year, like the foundations. So when you sit there and when you're talking, one of the bigger challenges that I have is, and this is completely understandable, people do things not out of, they don't need the accolades for it, or they don't, it's not like hey, look what I've done. They are part of these charities and foundations because they truly just want to make a difference. And one of the bigger struggles that I have is having those people come forward and actually saying what they're doing. And they're like, no, I really don't want that. And I'm like, look, at the end of the day, it's about your foundation and charity. How do we bring other people into what you're doing so we can create more awareness and everything else? But that's still something that I'm working on over time. Eventually start chipping at it. But when you watch people like Jamie Haver, come up and talk about like how beyond blindness. Literally took a non-functioning child, and I met Jack for the first time in person in March, into a fully functioning member of society. And it was that school that changed his life. When you see someone like that and they're like basically just pouring it out there, and then you look around the room and it's just all, tears, it's just like, wow,
Yeah.
who would have thought? And then we actually toured that school when we were out there. So actually being able to see it in motion, seeing progress in motion, what they do and everything. At the last event, we went with Scott Thacker and Ricky Rios and toured the Ridgewood School, which is one of the things we support. And they brought us into the classroom. We got to meet the kids, and they're like, oh, your donation helped us put on this play. I don't know, I think it was Lady and the Tramp, and not Lady and the Tramp. I don't know how people can be dogs. I'm sorry. Beauty and the Beast, whatever. And they were like, oh, I was Garcon or whatever the guy's name is. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, who would have thought?
Oh, that is so cool.
Actually being able to see where the money's going and to show that impact is, it's hard to explain that in words, Deb.
But I think it's also really neat to have a venue like this where you can connect the dots between the people that in the industry and then the things that I'm passionate about outside of the industry. And, that doesn't really get highlighted that often through our normal channels. So I think that that's really powerful.
Well, a lot of these things, it's, how it kind of came to be is it's 16 years worth of me being a salesperson. And these don't come out of just normal conversations. Typically, these kind of come up at like 11, like past 11 o'clock at night over a cocktail, where, that's where people are like, let down their guard a little bit. And they're like, oh yeah, I do this.
Yeah, very cool. So we were going to talk about what else is on the agenda for your Minneapolis event.
Perfect. So Sean McKenna is going to be moderating, back by popular demand, based on how successful it was in Cincinnati. We're doing another emerging talent advisory committee panel. So on that panel, you have Jacob Fall from Mitsubishi, Katie Thompson from Siemens, Harrison Smith from Stonebriar, and Christy Schoen from Channel. So we have a good variety of younger emerging talent, in the industry that's willing to, kind of share their stories. So that's more talking about what is the younger generation looking for in an employer? Do they want to be how do they want to be challenged financially? How do they want to be challenged professionally? What's the best way to communicate with the younger generation? How do you retain them, right? You mentioned the Great Resignation. How do you retain the younger talent? So it's all things ELFA eTech.
Cool, very cool. And that's a pretty interesting partnership for you. So how did that come about?
Well, Sean, Great American Insurance has been one of our main sponsors since it started last year. And Sean's been to every one of our events. And if we're talking on some of these, the human side, or how do we get the younger generation? I mean, I think it's been I got in at 23, right? So August makes 17 years. So I've always been on where people are like, oh, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm like, what about ageism, man? Like the younger people, like sorry to say that, but it's like, it's real, where it's like, how do we retain these younger people? And I'm like, what's going on? Even when you go around the conferences, I'm still, I think, probably maybe at the halfway point. I know there's a lot more younger people than me, but our industry still is pretty old. So it's how do we get the younger people involved in this? Let's face it, it's expensive to send people to trade shows, right?
Yeah.
People don't have a large budget. So how do we create a regional event where you can get some of the younger generation to hear what's going on in the industry? And especially when we're talking about giving back and, charities, foundations, that motivates a lot of younger people, because it's the human side of that. It's not just the younger generations. Obviously people are money driven, right? I mean, we're a capitalist society, but people also want to care, like, okay, what is my organization doing to make an impact? So
Yeah, people want to be purpose driven, so that makes a lot of sense. I was going to ask you something, I totally forgot. Wow, there you go.
Well, it's okay. I mean, I just ramble on about things, so sorry.
Oh, I wanted to ask you, so if we're ready to move on from equipment finance cares,
Sure.
so I was curious because I was thinking about this conversation earlier today, and I'm like, how many episodes have you done so far for this Fireside Chat thing?
I want to say this might be 80.
Oh my gosh.
We're approaching 80. I looked at the
Wow.
calendar the other day, or the video list, because I started it's still evolving. Like, this platform's evolving. I mean, these come out every Wednesday. I started doing a monthly NIFA member spotlight to, assist NIFA with some of their traffic and everything. We have our Foundation Fridays that you've done one with Technovation, right? As much as I'm still struggling to put a new one out every Friday. Maybe I'll get 2 a month, just because let's face it, this is a side hobby compared to my job.
Little passion project.
I think we're up to like 115, 120 total videos.
That is fantastic.
The YouTube page.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah, a lot of these shows, they end so quickly because they're not consistent. So kudos.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're I think this one will come out. I think I'm gonna do this one the first week in June to give us some ramp up time. But I mean, I'm shooting all of June this week. So I'm trying to be a month in advance, just because it's so hard to get them all out there. But people are already lined up for July and August, and it's like,
wow. Okay, well, let's take a trip down memory lane, because over 100 episodes with little video conversations like this. So what's one of your most surprising moments?
More surprising moments is Bob and Aldi cussing. Well, first of all, it's like him turning on his camera and being in a humidor, and I'm like, where are you? And then he threw out I don't even know what word he said. He goes, "Can I say that?" I'm like, "Well, you already did."
You don't edit this, do you?
I'm like, "Well, no." I'm like, "No," but at the end, I preface, it's like, if you'd like me to edit that, tell me. And he goes, "No, I said it." He goes, "It's fine." I mean, it's not like dropping an F-bomb. It was just maybe like, whatever. Anyhow.
Yeah.
But
awesome. So what about, has anybody made you snort laugh on your show?
Besides you, I'm just trying to think of, I mean, besides Bob, obviously, there's definitely been some characters on the show. I think the one that did the most was probably Walter Stranzel, because when you meet Walter, you're just like, okay, he's kind of reserved, kind of quiet. And then when during his episode, like, his landscapers came, like, just randomly that day, and there's a guy with a leaf blower just outside his window, and you just see the look on his face where he's like, okay, I think he's gone. Then he comes back again, and it was probably like 10 minutes, not joking. Wow. And the look on his face was priceless. I almost want to go back to that video before I edited it, and I have an outtakes reel that I started. It's just hard to keep up on. Yeah. And I just want to randomly put like a 5-second clip of him just spaced throughout the whole thing.
What was one of your favorite episodes?
I'm just trying to think. I mean, the one that you did last year was fun, where I had your background and you had my background and got to interview me. That was different. I mean, you asked me during that show, what one would you want to have on here? And that was Mike Jones, and I got him on here last month.
Oh, yay.
So that was
Do you think our show influenced that?
Honestly, he didn't even know what I was doing until I met him in person. I said, "You're doing this with me." So
oh, that's fantastic.
When you sit there and you think you know somebody, but then you have a conversation, you're just like, wow, I never knew that about you whatsoever. And we've known each other for 17 years. So
Wow, that's so cool. What is something that you have learned through the process of doing a show like this?
I guess the one thing that's resounding across the board is you don't go to school for this industry. You kind of fall into it. But once you're in it, it's like Hotel California. It's hard to get out. And that's kind of one of those resounding things that I hear from everyone, where no one just goes to school for this. You kind of fall into it.
Yeah. Well, I think, you ask your guests one of my favorite questions, like, how did you end up doing what you're doing today? What is one of the more memorable stories that you've heard from one of your guests on how they got into equipment finance?
Wow, that's a tough question. Um, I mean, some people are just like, I went out for drinks one night with this guy, and then I asked him what he was doing. And I'm sorry, I don't know the specific person, but they were like, I asked him what he did for a living, and I'm like, that doesn't exist. And then I looked him up, and then I realized it did exist. So that I went and applied for an internship, and now here I am, like 30 years later. Sorry, I can't reference the exact person that I was with, but that was a more unique thing. It was like the Wolf of Wall Street, where they're like, how much money did you make last month? And he showed him a thing. He goes, I will quit today if you show me how much money you made. And it's like, okay.
It's so interesting, just the loose connections and the thin thread that lands people in this industry. Because it's not like, you're a child and you're playing with equipment finance Barbie, and you've been dreaming about being in equipment finance for, your whole childhood, and that's how it happened. You usually kind of stumble into it, or a connection of a connection, or it's the job that was available.
Well, that, and you hear from a lot of people that it's like the connections that you have in this industry are an extension of your family. And I think we can all relate to that too, where when you go to these conferences, I mean, I've been to other conferences, but it's like when you go to here, you can definitely tell that your close friends are almost like the extension of your family.
Yeah, it is really interesting, the depth of connection in this space, and having that community of shared interest, and we all have like our own special language, and it is really special. Whether, and for me, whether it's in person or virtual, I feel that. So yeah, that's really cool. So I was gonna ask about just kind of one of your most favorite moments from this whole journey, the past 100+ episodes.
Once we hit over 1,000 subscribers on the channel, that was pretty cool.
Oh my gosh, that's really good.
As you sit there and you start to get it, that's fine. There was someone who told me a fun fact where every member of his family beat him in golf, and that was even his wife and 4 kids. And I'm like,
oh wow.
Maybe you should quit golf. like one of those things. You're like, wait, what? But no, I mean, and now it's when people are approaching me, Deb, and they're like, hey, we'd like to be on it. We see what you're doing. Like, what's the process? Like, tell me your process. It's like, do you charge anything to be on here? Or how do you vet people? And to me, it's like, okay, great. The answer is no, I don't charge people to be on here. This is a passion project of mine. And like you, right? You're a valuable consultant. Your time is worth money. You're giving me an hour today to talk to you here. So it's the best platform for me to be able to get, an hour of somebody's time. So why would I want to, benefit from that other than having those conversations?
What was that like for you, that journey though, to go from like just starting and like, how do I get people to agree to do this crazy new idea, this new show? And then how long did it take for that story to flip to now people are pursuing you to be part of it?
Well, I mean, what I was nervous about up front, well, first of all, if it started off with just talking to friends, where it's like, hey, you want to be on here? Hey, you want to be on here? And then I think Eric McGriff was like the first person. Then it was Nancy shortly after, where I knew nothing about them prior to jumping on this. And it's not like I sent out some questions ahead of time, like it's 4 questions. It's very simple, but I don't call people up and rehearse beforehand, because that takes away from the authenticity of what we're looking to accomplish on here.
Yeah.
Some people are like, no, we're having a call beforehand. And I'm like, whatever, I'm not going to really push back that hard. But, I want to say it took probably a solid 60 episodes. I mean, it was over a year before all of a sudden now people are like, hey, look. And I think it's one of the reasons behind it is like, I keep the format and everything to myself. It's not like I'm throwing it on the trade publications or anything. It's off of my YouTube channel. I have friends in the industry like yourself who share, I ask people when it comes out, share it to your organization and everything else. But, it's nice now. I mean, because the question was, what happens after the pandemic's over? Are people really going to want to do this format, or is it losing its luster? But I'm actually seeing the viewership go up. I mean, the one that we did last Wednesday with Mark Bonanno from North Mill is already at 200 views.
Wow.
Which is crazy in that short period of time. Not to say that Mark isn't super interesting. He has a great story to tell, but the viewership over the last, I want to say 6 to 8 weeks, typically you get 50, 75, but now we're over 100 for each of those episodes. So it's definitely.
Yeah, and in the grand scheme of things, you just think about the size of our industry and just how active people are in these online communities. Those are good numbers.
And the next thing I need to do is I need to figure out a way to convert the YouTube channel to a podcast, because YouTube's annoying where if you sit there on your phone and the screen turns off.
Yeah, and actually I think your the consumption will go up, because I know for myself, like I like to bike, and that's when I catch up on podcasts and stuff. And it's so much easier to take in a podcast while biking than a video.
Well, especially who wants to stare at my mug while they're biking? I mean, biking is a hard enough task, let alone if you had to look at me for a couple of hours. That'd be very strenuous.
Well, speaking of biking, I was going to ask you, I know you're big into Peloton. Have you taken your Peloton off of any sweet jumps?
No, I have not. I do. I don't follow any of the program. I just have it up there in the background, and I basically almost have that thing cranked up the entire time.
Yeah.
So I hope it doesn't come off its base, because otherwise I'll have a really bad time.
I was really addicted to spin classes years ago. And I remember one of the instructors made me laugh so hard. And she was like warning us, because you know how you do the jump practice on a stationary bike. But she was like, don't move your bikes. And I don't know why, but maybe I was just overtired, but it just struck me so funny. I'm like snort laughing in class.
Because you could just picture how hard you're going on these things, and God forbid it actually like. No,
move.
I would not be good. There's like a window like right in front of me. I would probably go through it.
Oh geez.
I think there's a camera on the wall, so I'm sure it'd be entertaining for a lot of people.
Yeah, get that on your blooper reel.
Yeah. Right?
Oh man, I still don't have a Peloton. Did you ever see my redneck version?
You sent that to me. That was very innovative. You had the space, you even circled the space heater in the room, because it's like it's cold.
Well, it was 40 below when I built that. Got my ironing board over the handlebars, got the bike up on a trainer, cup holder.
I think I saw like a CLFP handbook that you threw in there that was on top of the ironing board.
Oh yeah, I had my laptop on top of it. I was doing my research for the book at the time. Yeah. Anyway, I prefer to write outside.
Fair.
When it's warm out. Anyway, thanks so much for letting me goof off with you on your Fireside Chat show again.
No worries, Deb.
I'm looking forward to your event coming up soon?
Nah, we already have, we're capping this one at 60 because like we were mentioning earlier, we want to make sure we have an intimate group.
Yeah.
We already have 40 people committed.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, I think today was like the first day I actually posted it to my LinkedIn and,
oh, wow. Okay.
So we'll definitely sell out. Thank you, Honor Capital's hosting everything.
Awesome. Thank you, Honor Capital.
Thank you to them and True North for all their relationships there and partnerships. So thank you. But yeah, Deb, love having you on here. You're welcome. You're welcome whenever. You're a great guest.
Thanks. Always fun to goof off with you, and can't wait to see you here in Minneapolis soon.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully it stays warm until I get there, or it'll probably stay warm until I get there.
It's Minnesota. You never know. Just bring a parka in case. No, just kidding.
That's fair. That's fair.
No, it should be nice. June is a great time to visit.
Excellent.
So, all right. Well, thanks for all you do, Jesse. Appreciate you. Till next time.
Appreciate you. All right. Sounds great, Deb. Have a good one.
All right. Bye-bye.
Take care.